On May the 13th, 1917, in Covadonga, 3 children were tending their flock of sheep when they witnessed the supernatural apparition of a beautiful young lady.
Have you ever wondered if heaven is actually sending a warning to humanity? When the world asks for peace and security and repents all the evil it has done, the sudden destruction of the new Armageddon will arrive, and all will suffer. These were the prophecies of the Virgin of Fatima when she appeared to the 3 children in 1917 and said that on this date, 2025 would come to an end. This prophecy could be a warning for all of us. Will 2025 be the moment when the 3rd secret of Fatima is officially revealed? Let's wait and see. A warning for 2025. Well, we are very close to 2025. I think we can all agree, no matter what our religious or political bent, that the world is getting weirder and wilder by the day, and yes, that applies to the chaos that has seeped into the church. The 3rd secret of Fatima has been only partially revealed, and it maybe announces today's crisis in the church. Even if one wants to question whether the 3rd secret actually mentions the Mass and the Council, there appears to be no doubt that the missing part of the secret speaks of dangers threatening the faith. For years prior to the release of the vision of the secret in 2000, testimony from Fatima experts and witnesses related that the 3rd secret predicted a great crisis of faith in the church. In Sister Lucy's memoirs, at the end of the 2nd secret, we find the phrase, "In Portugal, the dogma of faith will always be preserved." Many Fatima scholars have seen this line as a segue into the 3rd secret. It's the introduction of a new idea, a new point, and it's an indication that the 3rd secret may deal with a crisis of faith, since it seems that the dogma of faith will be lost everywhere else. But what was released by the Vatican leaves that line orphaned. It is left hanging, with no connection to anything else that follows, and it gives the distinct impression that something is missing. Oddly enough, in 1984, even Cardinal Ratzinger spoke about the prophecy of the 3rd secret concerning the dangers to the faith. It might be an attack on the very heart of Christianity. The urgent invitation to conversion and consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The messages of Fatima speak of consecration, not entrustment. There is a profound difference. Entrustment is more superficial, while consecration is much more powerful because it involves the entire person, family, church, or nation that makes it. It is like saying, "I am yours. I hand over to you my entire being, so that you may deliver it to the Father." The recitation of the Rosary as a weapon to defeat Satan, a weapon that drives away every danger to the soul and other dangers as well. The legacy of Fatima's message. When we reflect on the 100 years since the Fatima apparitions, it is evident that the messages shown by the Virgin Mary have had a lasting impact beyond the original context of the 3 secrets. These messages are deeply embedded in many people's lives, giving them guidance and a sense of the power of faith. The story of Fatima is a reflection of the common fears and hopes of all people. At its heart, it is about discovering the light in the darkest times and getting help during the most uncertain moments. Fatima's messages are so popular because they are simple and ask people to return to basic values, such as peace and repentance. Through the years, the importance of Fatima has increased, and thus, it has influenced not just the lives of individuals, but also the church practices and spiritual discussions worldwide. The centennial of these apparitions is a sign of time and a chance to think about how these messages are still encouraging positive change. People are being told that even though the modern world is very challenging, some old truths can guide their choices and actions. The legacy of Fatima shows us that hope is always there and that spiritual insights can help us deal with even the most challenging global problems. Through the messages of Fatima, we realize that their strength is in the fact that they motivate us to create a better future for ourselves and future generations. In the case of Fatima's prophecies, it is essential to strike a balance between faith and skepticism. People usually depend on their faith in times of uncertainty, seeking solace and advice in religious doctrines. Prophecies can strengthen faith, giving a sense of meaning or destiny that something bigger is in the picture. Nevertheless, looking at these prophecies with a skeptical eye is also necessary to avoid misinterpretations that could lead to fear or irrational actions. For many, the messages from Fatima are a call to return to spiritual values and to think about how our actions affect others and the world. These messages do not have to be seen as supernatural predictions to be meaningful. Still, they can also be seen as timeless reminders of the importance of living with kindness and integrity. On November 17, 2001, Sister Lucia met with Archbishop Bertone to clarify claims of more prediction. Their meeting was narrated in a book titled Sister Lucy, Secret of Fatima Contains No More Mysteries. It states, with reference to the third part of the Secret of Fatima, Sister Lucia affirmed that she had attentively read and meditated upon the booklet published by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, The Message of Fatima, and confirmed everything that was written there. To whoever imagines that some part of the secret has been hidden, she replied, everything has been published. No secret remains. To those who speak and write of new revelations, she said, there is no truth in this. If I received new revelations, I would have told no one, but I would have communicated them directly to the Holy Father. Sister Lucia, before her death, predicted that the final battle between Christ and Satan would be over marriage and the family. So says Cardinal Carlo Caffarra, who reports that the visionary sent him a letter with this prediction when he was Archbishop of Bologna, Italy. On February 16, 2008, the Italian Cardinal Caffarra had celebrated a mass at the tomb of Padre Pio, after which he gave an interview. He was asked about the prophecy of Sister Lucia dos Santos that speaks about the final battle between the Lord and the kingdom of Satan. Cardinal Caffarra explained that St. John Paul II had commissioned him to plan and establish the Pontifical Institute for Studies on Marriage and Family. At the beginning of this work, the cardinal wrote a letter to Sister Lucia of Fatima through her bishop, since he could not do it directly. In that letter, we find written, the final battle between the Lord and the kingdom of Satan will be about marriage and the family. Don't be afraid, she added, because whoever works for the sanctity of marriage and the family will always be fought against and opposed in every way, because this is the decisive issue. Then, she concluded, nevertheless, Our Lady has already crushed his head. Cardinal Caffarra added that, speaking again with John Paul II, you could feel that the family was the core, since it has to do with the supporting pillar of creation, the truth of the relationship between man and woman, between the generations. If the foundational pillar is damaged, the entire building collapses, and we're seeing this now because we are right at this point, and we know it. And I am moved when I read the best biographies of Padre Pio, the cardinal concluded, about how this man was so attentive to the sanctity of marriage and the holiness of the spouses, even with justifiable rigor at times. The end times. Part of the message revealed by Our Lady of Fatima does have some frightening images. For example, Sister Lucia, who wrote down the visions, details one harrowing episode. We saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance, penance, penance!" And we saw in an immense light that is God. Something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of it. A bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father. Other bishops, priests, men and women, religious going up a steep mountain, at the top of which there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks as of a cork tree with the bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city, half in ruins, and half trembling with halting step, afflicted with pain and sorrow. He prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. The image is clearly apocalyptic in nature, detailing a barren wasteland decimated by something terrible. Ratzinger offered his explanation of the vision, clarifying what it means. The angel with the flaming sword on the left of the Mother of God recalls similar images in the book of Revelation. This represents the threat of judgment which looms over the world. Today, the prospect that the world might be reduced to ashes by a sea of fire no longer seems pure fantasy. Man himself, with his inventions, has forged the flaming sword. In other words, the atomic bomb has shown us that this is possible, and we have already committed crimes similar to this in our recent history. Yet, this desolate future is not set in stone. In fact, there is one primary force holding it at bay. The vision then shows the power that stands opposed to the force of destruction, the splendor of the Mother of God, and stemming from this in a certain way, the summons to penance. In this way, the importance of human freedom is underlined. The future is not, in fact, unchangeably set, and the image which the children saw is in no way a film preview of a future in which nothing can be changed. Ratzinger firmly believed that these visions highlight the freedom of the individual, encouraging us to repent and believe in the gospel. We are not bound to a fate of destruction, but invited to turn towards God with our whole hearts. As Ratzinger notes about the third secret, those who expected exciting apocalyptic revelations about the end of the world or the future course of history are bound to be disappointed. Jesus reminds us that we will never know the exact time of the world's end, but instead, we need to maintain a spirit of watchfulness, waiting patiently for Christ to come again. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. Similarly, Our Lady of Fatima doesn't give us a future set in stone, but invites us to repent, as we will either reap the fruits of our sin or our holiness. Vatican discloses third secret of Fatima and the missing part. Fatima fanatics have held hunger strikes, one even hijacked a plane, to try to force the Vatican to disclose the secret. During John Paul's first visit to the shrine in 1982, on the first anniversary of the assassination attempt, a knife-wielding Spanish priest tried to kill the Pope, but was wrestled to the ground by security officers. Pope John Paul II has always credited the Virgin of Fatima with saving his life. After he visited the shrine in 1982 to give thanks for his survival, a bullet extracted from his body was placed alongside diamonds in a gold crown worn by a statue of the Virgin. In 1991, on the 10th anniversary of the attack, he returned again to give thanks for his life, as well as for the collapse of communism, which believers say the Virgin of Fatima also predicted in 1917. On the solemn occasion of his visit to Fatima, His Holiness has directed me to make an announcement to you, Cardinal Sodano said, adding that the Pope wishes his pilgrimage to be a renewed gesture of gratitude to Our Lady for her protection during these years of his papacy. This protection seems also to be linked to the so-called third part of the secret of Fatima. Pope John Paul II did refer to the prophecies today, speaking of Fatima, where these times of tribulation were foretold, but he made no mention of the third secret. Instead, he once again gave thanks for the goodness of God toward me when severely struck on that May 13, 1981, I was rescued from death. This revelation helps to explain the Pope's conviction that Our Lady of Fatima saved his life in an attack that took place on the 65th anniversary of the first apparition at Fatima. The Pope believed that a motherly hand which guided the bullet's path delivered him from the threshold of death. The Pope first learned of the secret a few days after he was elected in 1978, the Vatican said. He did not announce it himself today, said his spokesman, Dr. Joaquin Navarro Valls, because he was personally involved. Vatican officials did not say why the secret was not revealed sooner after the assassination attempt in 1981. The fact that the Pope put the two dead witnesses to the Virgin's apparitions on the path of sainthood today was another sign of his devotion to Fatima. The two, Francisco and Jacinta Marto, are the first children ever beatified by the Roman Catholic Church who were not martyrs. Beatification, which is bestowed only on the dead, is the penultimate step before sainthood. Since the early 1960s, it is said that a part of the text of the famous Third Secret of Fatima has been openly passed about in various sectors of the Church. It was reported that the Pope supposedly permitted the leaders of Russia and the United States to see the document around the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Others claim that a priest who was on the commission to beatify the two younger visionaries of Fatima revealed the contents. German and French newspapers reported on the supposedly revealed message as well. It has passed through so many hands by now that it is, of course, impossible to authenticate completely, so people need to evaluate its veracity for themselves. But since nothing in the document goes against church teaching, and because so much of it speaks, with astonishing accuracy, to exactly what's happening in the world today, it should be taken seriously. Keep in mind that this circulated text, which is purported to be originally part of the third secret given by Our Lady to Lucy, and initially reported in 1963 and 1964 in foreign publications, predates both the Akita Revelations, 1973, and John Paul II's statement in Fulda, 1980. This suggests a unified message has emerged from different sources, which is another reason to take it seriously. Note the reference to a great war and great chastisement coming in the second half of the 20th century. That time has already passed, right? However, rather than believe it will never happen, it is not unreasonable to believe that through Our Lady's intercession, the time of mercy has been extended still longer. She does not give us these warnings to scare us, but so that we can change the outcome through our preaching, prayers, and penances, as was the case with Jonah and Nineveh. Another reference in the text might explain why the Vatican was not willing to reveal this message in 2000 at Fatima. It is the reference to cardinals and bishops in opposition to each other, with Satan in their midst, which was not obvious in 2000. This is undoubtedly the fulfillment of Our Lady's warning in the missing part of the third secret that in Rome also will occur great changes. What is rotten falls, and what falls must not be retained. The church will be obscured, and all the world will be thrown into great confusion. The only thing that has not yet happened in the missing part of the third secret, perhaps because of the mercy of God, is the punishment for all of these sins. While the punishment mentioned by Our Lady in the warning, especially since everything has worsened, could be anything from a worldwide economic collapse to a natural disaster like a meteor striking the earth, her warning is reminiscent of the punishments of the flood given the people at Noah's time, and the fire from the sky dealt out to the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And it is only logical that God would speak to us in warnings and actions similar to those in the Bible, so that the people of the world would understand the nature of the sins and why they are being punished. Is God going to allow a huge meteor or asteroid to plunge into the ocean at a speed of perhaps 45,000 miles per hour, causing 300 miles of the coastline to disappear all over the planet Earth? Of course, we don't know all the answers. But we do know one thing: God is not mocked, and everything has worsened. We can only hope and pray that the Pope and bishops will take up the staff of Jonah and begin their journey through the evil Nineveh of our present day. If they don't, remember what Our Lady said to Senior Lucia of Fatima about the spread of sin: woe and greater woe, especially if everything worsens. The best-kept secret of the 20th century. Secrecy breeds speculation, and much speculation was made as to the content of this third secret. Some declarations made by Lucia complaining that the Holy Father had not made the consecration to Mary requested by the Blessed Virgin led some to think that the third secret contained apocalyptic predictions that the popes preferred to reserve to themselves in order to avoid panic. After the accident, Pope John Paul II began to turn around his person. He became the Pope of Fatima, even making a pilgrimage to the site and placing the bullet that had wounded him in the crown of the image there as a sign of thanksgiving for her maternal protection. He said that one hand pulled the trigger and another hand guided the bullet. It is indeed amazing to note how the bullet was able to pass through his body in very sensitive areas without hitting any vital organs. Nearly 20 years would pass before the Pope would publish the secret. There was a certain effort to publish it in 1984, and another current wanted to reveal the secret on a May 13th in commemoration of the anniversary of the first apparition. As Russia was specifically mentioned in the first parts of the message, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 led to fresh speculation. The angel's message asking for penance in order to avoid earthly catastrophes should be taken to heart. The message of Fatima is consistent with the message revealed in the third secret. Prayer and devotion to the Blessed Virgin should be coupled with penance. Mary can avert disasters because of her special relationship with her son. The third secret is often associated with the assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II. He is thus identified as the bishop in white seen by the children. But the prophecy seems to be much greater than this. Perhaps the deeper lesson is that prayer and penance need to be practiced as the best possible protection against a general apostasy. Apostasy is the sin of denying the faith, and what was once a manner of escaping death from persecution has become almost a fad in many Western countries. It seems popular or cool to be unchurched and unaffiliated to organized religion. Curiously, the rise in apostasy has not ended the era of martyrs. For the 20th century has witnessed, on the contrary, a multiplication of martyrs, both clergy and laity. Russia itself proved to be a country rich in martyrs and persecution of the Christianity. The exhortation of the Blessed Virgin to prayer and penance has not been heeded sufficiently, and thus she has not been able to intervene as she would have liked. The conversion of Russia is still lacking. That's the heart of the question for people in the Fatima Challenge movement. They argue that the third secret of Fatima was a prophecy so traumatic and dire that several popes decided not to make it known to the faithful. And yet the text published in 2000 contained little more than an allegory about the Church's past struggles with 20th century ideologies. They say there's good reason to believe the third secret wasn't just about the Church battling outside forces, but about Satan working in the Church at the highest levels. Some have deduced that the secret foresaw the changes of the Second Vatican Council, especially in liturgy and ecumenical dialogue, as part of the great apostasy that church leaders refuse to acknowledge. Most recently, several of these die-hard Fatimists, as a Vatican official once described them, have suggested that the priestly sex abuse crisis in the Church is a clear sign of the crisis of faith and pastoral negligence prophesied, they say, by Mary at Fatima. The conference took place a few days before Pope Benedict XVI's visit to Fatima, and organizers went out of their way to invite the Pope and Vatican officials. None showed up. The Pope's Vatican aides consider the Fatimists a fringe element that is best ignored. Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone, the Vatican Secretary of State, has said one of the reasons the third secret was made public in 2000 was that people were spreading absurd theses about catastrophic events or heresy at the top levels of the Church. Cardinal Bertone, who was personally involved in the publication of the third secret, said he was puzzled that some still think the Vatican is hiding something. In 2006, an Italian journalist wrote a book titled The Fourth Secret of Fatima that laid out a Vatican conspiracy theory, prompting a new round of publicity. In 2007, Cardinal Bertone wrote his own book, The Last Visionary of Fatima, which reiterated the official version of the Fatima messages and secrets, and was based, he said, on long conversations with Carmelite sister Lucia dos Santos, the last of the visionaries to die. In TV appearances, the cardinal strongly denied theories of a Vatican cover-up. Pope Benedict was also personally involved in publishing the Third Secret. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the Vatican's top doctrinal official, presented the text of the secret to the press and wrote a lengthy commentary about it. That news conference on June 26, 2000, is still memorable for Vatican journalists. The stage was set for the disclosure of a text that for decades was thought to be too disturbing to reveal, but instead, Cardinal Ratzinger began by deflating expectations and announcing that there was nothing apocalyptic. "No great mystery is revealed, nor is the future unveiled," he said. He went on to give a theological framework to the apparitions and messages of Fatima, insisting that in the Church's tradition, prophecy is not like a film preview, but more like offering signs that can be useful for Christians. Cardinal Ratzinger said that was how to understand the Third Secret's vision of a bishop in white, who struggles up a hill amid corpses of slain martyrs and then falls dead after being shot by soldiers. Whether this bishop symbolized Pope John Paul II, who was shot and wounded on May 13, 1981, or a convergence of several 20th century pontiffs who helped the Church ward off the dangers, it doesn't mean someone must be killed, the cardinal said. That explanation still sticks in the craw of Fatimists, who say it deliberately removes the vision's apocalyptic scenario and lulls the faithful into a false sense of security. The Vatican's version, they say, suggests these problems are behind the Church, when in their view, the worst is yet to come. Father Nicholas Gruner, a Canadian priest who founded the Fatima Crusader magazine, has long maintained that Russia has yet to be consecrated to Mary, following the instructions of Our Lady of Fatima. Father Gruner said, "We haven't had the conversion of Russia by any stretch of the imagination. Not militarily, not morally. It's the largest abortion capital of the world. There's just no sign of conversion in any sense." That's another issue the Vatican is tired of dealing with. Church officials say Pope John Paul II in 1984 led the world's bishops in the consecration of Russia and the world. The late Sister Lucia, one of the 3 Portuguese children who saw Mary in 1917 and the one who received the instructions for the consecration, had said that it was properly performed. The Fatima messages are not dogma, and the Church does not impose belief or any single interpretation. That seems to ensure that the Fatimists will continue to broadcast their theories to whoever will listen. In Fatima, Mary asked the shepherd children to pray for the Holy Father. Her message would be difficult for him, but also a source of consolation and strength. What is clear about the secret is that it is a call to prayer for bishops, and especially the Pope. The Church of the 20th and now 21st century is a church that faces persecution and needs the protection of prayer and Mary's mantle. Our Lady of Fatima, pray for us.
Where Virgin Mary appeared to 3 shepherd children in 1917. They said she gave them 3 messages.
If you believe we have uncovered the Third Secret of Fatima, your assumption might be partially accurate. Although the Third Secret was revealed after being kept hidden for millennia, the Vatican may still be concealing something even more terrifying. Recently, Pope Francis has finally revealed some truths about the Third Secret of Fatima. The Pope also made a special trip to Fatima and offered prayers for the world. What exactly happened? What is the significance of Pope Francis's actions? And what unexpected message awaits us? Entrusting the world to Our Lady of Fatima, Pope Francis returns to the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima during his apostolic journey to Portugal in order to pray for an end to the war at the heart of Europe, at the site of apparitions closely linked to Russia and the popes of the 20th century. Pope Francis visited the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima for the 2nd time of his pontificate, where 3 shepherd children received a message in May 1917 from the Blessed Virgin Mary about the future of humanity. The fact that he has decided to return to the feet of Our Lady of Fatima holds significance and reflects the Pope's intention to address the tragic conflicts are happening all around the world, as well as the numerous forgotten conflicts around the world. Pope Francis fervently prayed, "We have strayed from that path of peace. We have forgotten the lesson learned from the tragedies of the last century, the sacrifice of the millions who fell in 2 world wars. We have disregarded the commitments we made as a community of nations. We have betrayed people's dreams of peace and the hopes of the young. Star of the sea, do not let us be shipwrecked in the tempest of war. Free us from war. Protect our world from the menace of nuclear weapons." The apparitions at Fatima are closely linked to the popes of the 20th century. Pope Benedict XV, amidst the horrors of World War I, decided on 5 May 1917 to add the invocation "Queen of Peace, pray for us" to the traditional Litany of Loreto recited after the Rosary. A few days later, on 13th May, the first apparition of Our Lady of Fatima occurred. This event coincided with the day Pope Benedict XV consecrated Bishop Eugenio Pacelli in the Sistine Chapel, who would later become his second successor, Pius XIII. On 31st October 1942, Pius XIV consecrated the peoples separated by error or discord to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. In May 1967, Paul VI became the first pope to make a pilgrimage to Fatima, when he visited Portugal, as it was still under the regime of the dictator Salazar, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the apparitions. Just before his departure, Pope Paul VI explained, "The spiritual motive which seeks to give this journey depth of meaning is to once again, with greater humility and intensity, pray for peace." In his homily at Fatima, he urged, "Do not entertain thoughts of destruction, death, or revolution. Reflect on projects that promote common comfort and solidarity. Recognize the gravity and magnitude of this hour, which may prove decisive for the present and future generations." Paul VI vividly described the gravity of the historical situation, highlighting the great arsenal of terribly deadly weapons, misaligned with moral and technical progress, juxtaposed with the state of poverty and destitution faced by the majority of humanity. "It is for this reason that we say that the world is in danger," he said. "It is for this reason that we have come to the feet of the Queen to implore peace, a gift which only God can bestow. Observe how the outlook of the world and its destinies are presented here in immense and dramatic form." The recitation of the Rosary led by Pope Francis at the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima. For all of us, we consecrate the Church and the world, especially those countries at war. As he prayed the Rosary, a profound silence encapsulated the collective voice of millions of souls, all united in the single wish for the world to put aside the horrors of war, every war. There was a long moment of silence in the chapel of the apparitions as he sat before Our Lady. The Pope prayed with sorrow for peace. Our Pope Francis's silent prayer was a sort of anticipation of the fourth mystery of the Rosary recited shortly afterward, which carried the same supplication at its core. For all of you who are watching this, please close your eyes, take a deep breath, then follow these brief, intense lines of prayer together. With childlike hearts, we consecrate to you our lives forever. To you, we consecrate the Church and the world, especially those countries at war. Obtain peace for us. You, Virgin of the Way, open paths where it seems that none exist. The final sentence exudes complete confidence in the intercessory power of the Virgin Mary, surpassing any evil. The secret is not only about Pope John Paul II. Recall that in Fatima, the Blessed Mother gave 3 secrets. The first was the vision of hell, and the second was the prophecy on the end of the First World War, and the coming of another to be preceded by a sign in the sky, which came in 1938, in a strange occurrence of the Northern Lights, seen in various parts of the world before World War II erupted. The first 2 secrets were already revealed years ago, but the third one was kept secret until the year 2000, as Pope John Paul II directed the Holy See's Secretary of State to make it public. The Vatican announced that the third secret spoke of a bishop in white who was shot by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. John Paul II had the impression that the bishop in white referred to him, as he was indeed shot, but survived assassination at St. Peter's Square in 1981. John Paul II, who survived the attempt on his life in 1981, believed it was Our Lady of Fatima who saved his life by diverting the bullet that day. John Paul traveled here 3 times as Pope. Pope John Paul later donated the bullet which had been removed from his body to the shrine. It is now lodged in the bejeweled crown of the statue of the Virgin Mary of Fatima, housed in the Capellina, the chapel built on the site where she is said to have appeared to the children in the center of the large sanctuary complex. Prominent Catholic leaders who allegedly saw the original letter written by Sister Lucia on the third secret insisted that not all the contents of the third secret were revealed. Thus, over the years since 2000, speculations mushroomed on what was lacking in the released third secret. If the 1981 assassination attempt against John Paul II is the fulfillment of the third secret, then we have a real problem with something Sister Lucia wrote a year later, in 1982. Because on May 12, 1982, a year after the attempt on the Pope's life, Sister Lucy wrote to the Pope, "If we have not yet seen the complete fulfillment of the final part of the prophecy of third secret, we are going towards it little by little with great strides. If we do not reject the path of sin, hatred, revenge, it is people themselves who are preparing their own punishment." So we see that 1 year after the assassination attempt, Sister Lucia made it clear that the prophecy of the secret has not yet been completely fulfilled, that the world is moving in great strides towards an even greater punishment because of sin. And she herself draws no connection in her letter between the assassination attempt a year earlier. There are 2 manuscripts, but only one released. In 1957, just before the envelope containing the third secret was transferred from Portugal to the Vatican, Auxiliary Bishop Venancio of Portugal momentarily held the secret in his hand. He took the opportunity to hold the sealed envelope up to the light. Bishop Venancio saw that this envelope contained a smaller envelope, and inside that smaller envelope was a small folded piece of paper with handwriting on it. Bishop Venancio could see then that the third secret was approximately 20 to 25 handwritten lines on one small margined piece of paper. By contrast, what was released by the Vatican on June 26th was 4 sheets of paper, 64 lines. There are 2 texts, but 1 description and 1 explanation. Here's how Father Nicholas Gruner explains it. He points out that whenever Our Lady of Fatima gave a vision to the children, she always supplied the explanation. On July 13, 1917, Our Lady of Fatima gave the children the vision of hell. And even though this vision seemed self-explanatory, Our Lady also supplied the explanation. "You have seen hell, where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart." Likewise, on June 13, 1917, Our Lady opened her hands and a light came from her hands. The light from one hand fell on Jacinta and Francisco and then went upwards towards heaven, but the light from Our Lady's other hand reflected off Lucy and spread out over the countryside. Lucy said that they understood that this meant that Francisco and Jacinta would be taken to heaven soon, and that Lucy was to stay on earth in order to spread the message of Fatima. Even though the children understood, Our Lady still explained the vision. She said, "I will take Jacinta and Francisco soon, but you," means Lucia, "are to stay here some time longer to spread devotion to my Immaculate Heart." So, there's good reason to believe that the third secret may be structured along the same lines. The 64-line text that was released on June 26th was the vision, but we still have not been given the explanation, which may be contained in the 23-line text, which may in fact refer to the crisis of faith of our time, especially if the half-ruined city mentioned in the vision represents the city of God, the Catholic Church. Here's what Pope John Paul II said in 1980 during a visit to Fulda, Germany, when asked about the third secret. He replied, "If there is a message in which it is said that the oceans will flood entire sections of the earth, that, from one moment to the other, millions of people will perish. There is no longer any point in really wanting to publish this secret message. Many want to know merely out of curiosity, or because of their taste for sensationalism, but they forget that to know implies for them a responsibility. It is dangerous to want to satisfy one's curiosity only if one is convinced that we can do nothing against a catastrophe that has been predicted." Secrecy breeds speculation, and much speculation was made as to the content of this third secret. Some declarations made by Lucia complaining that the Holy Father had not made the consecration to Mary requested by the Blessed Virgin led some to think that the third secret contained apocalyptic predictions that the popes preferred to reserve to themselves in order to avoid panic. After the accident, Pope John Paul II began to turn around his person. He became the Pope of Fatima, even making a pilgrimage to the site and placing the bullet that had wounded him in the crown of the image there as a sign of thanksgiving for her maternal protection. He said that one hand pulled the trigger and another hand guided the bullet. It is indeed amazing to note how the bullet was able to pass through his body in very sensitive areas without hitting any vital organs. Nearly 20 years would pass before the Pope would publish the secret. There was a certain effort to publish it in 1984, and another current wanted to reveal the secret on a May 13th in commemoration of the anniversary of the first apparition. As Russia was specifically mentioned in the first parts of the message, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 led to fresh speculation. The angel's message asking for penance in order to avoid earthly catastrophes should be taken to heart. The message of Fatima is consistent with the message revealed in the third secret. Prayer and devotion to the Blessed Virgin should be coupled with penance. Mary can avert disasters because of her special relationship with her son. The third secret is often associated with the assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II. He is thus identified as the bishop in white seen by the children. But the prophecy seems to be much greater than this. Perhaps the deeper lesson is that prayer and penance need to be practiced as the best possible protection against a general apostasy. Apostasy is the sin of denying the faith, and what was once a manner of escaping death from persecution has become almost a fad in many Western countries. It seems popular or cool to be unchurched and unaffiliated to organized religion. Curiously, the rise in apostasy has not ended the era of martyrs. For the 20th century has witnessed, on the contrary, a multiplication of martyrs, both clergy and laity. Russia itself proved to be a country rich in martyrs and persecution of the Christianity. The exhortation of the Blessed Virgin to prayer and penance has not been heeded sufficiently, and thus she has not been able to intervene as she would have liked. The conversion of Russia is still lacking. In Fatima, Mary asked the shepherd children to pray for the Holy Father. Her message would be difficult for him, but also a source of consolation and strength. What is clear about the secret is that it is a call to prayer for bishops, and especially the Pope. The Church of the 20th and now 21st century is a church that faces persecution and needs the protection of prayer and Mary's mantle. Our Lady of Fatima, pray for us. The third secret of Fatima is now revealed. The third secret of Fatima was held by the only one of the children, Sister Lucia. She was ordered in 1944 by her bishop to write out the third secret, and did so in holy obedience. In 2000, the Vatican released the text of her statement, along with a commentary by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who would later be elected Pope 15th. This is Sister Lucia's description of what was revealed. I write in obedience to you, my God, who command me to do so through His Excellency the Bishop of Lyria, and through your most holy mother and mine. After the two parts, which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, It gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance, penance, penance." And we saw in an immense light that is God. Something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of it, a bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father. Other bishops, priests, men and women religious, going up a steep mountain, at the top of which there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks, as of a cork tree with the bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city, half in ruins and half trembling with halting step, afflicted with pain and sorrow. He prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain, on his knees at the foot of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. And in the same way, there died one after another, the other bishops, priests, men and women religious, and various lay people of different ranks and positions. Beneath the two arms of the cross, there were two angels each with a crystal aspersorium in his hand, in which they gathered up the blood of the martyrs and with it sprinkled the souls that were making their way to God. Then, let's look at the Vatican's interpretation through the Cardinal's reaction. Turning to the content of the third secret, the Cardinal writes that the prophetic vision which was disclosed to the three young children who saw the Virgin Mary at Fatima was a preview of the 20th century. The Cardinal writes, "In the vision, we can recognize the last century as a century of martyrs, a century of suffering and persecution for the Church, a century of world wars and the many local wars which filled the last 50 years and have inflicted unprecedented forms of cruelty. That vision is coupled with Mary's plea for prayer and penance," Cardinal Ratzinger continues, "and taken as a whole, the Fatima message is a strong reminder that the crises of the world must finally be resolved not through armed force but through prayer and reliance on God's grace." Thus, despite its violent imagery and its strong warning tone, the Fatima's message concludes with a note of confidence. "My Immaculate Heart will triumph." To understand the signs of the times, the Cardinal writes, means to accept the urgency of penance, of conversion, of faith. This is the correct response to this moment of history, characterized by the grave perils outlined in the images that follow. The Cardinal's words, which offer at least some comfort, are lent weight by a very interesting revelation, he added. Cardinal Ratzinger discloses that he spoke with Sister Lucia, the sole surviving Fatima seer, about the content of the entire Fatima message. He reports that Sister Lucia said that it appeared ever more clearly to her that the purpose of all the apparitions was to help people to grow more and more in faith, hope, and love. Everything else was intended to lead to this. During the Beatification homily, John Paul II made highly interesting references, which are likely related to it. Above all, he made it clear that the Fatima message is a call to conversion. Moreover, the pontiff confirmed some particular aspects of the three secrets: Jacinta's and Francisco's premature deaths, the 20th century's terrible wars and persecutions, the need to pray to shorten the evils against man, and the attack that he himself suffered in 1981 in the Vatican. He also quoted the Apocalypse when it speaks of the dragon, which symbolizes evil, and he affirmed that when man puts God to one side, he cannot find happiness but, on the contrary, ends in self-destruction. The confirmation of the second secret of Fatima, which refers to the world wars, was alluded to indirectly by the Pope when he said, "How many victims there have been in this last century of the second millennium." I am thinking of the horrors of the two great wars and other conflicts in other parts of the world. I am also thinking of the concentration camps and the extermination, the gulags, the ethnic cleansing, the persecutions, terrorism, kidnappings, drugs, attacks on the life of the unborn, and against the family. The Holy Father recalled Jacinta's words, who said, referring to Francisco, that the Virgin has come to see us and has said that very soon she will come to take him. Prophesied the tribulations of these times, and the Virgin asked for prayers to shorten these evils. He added that, because of this, I want to thank God for having saved me from death on May 13, 1981. I also express my appreciation to Blessed Jacinta for the sacrifices and prayers for the Pope whom she saw suffer. Secret is still a secret. Over years after the Vatican divulged one of the Church's best-kept secrets, the third part of Fatima's message, many people are still not satisfied with that explanation. They suspect that the Vatican is still hiding a piece needed to complete the true secret. Many people, including Italian journalist Antonio Socchi, accused the Vatican of not releasing the full text of the secret, citing various inconsistencies between what was released and what had been said previously about the secret. Most importantly, a rumor surfaced that Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, also the future Pope Benedict XVI, had privately confessed to his friend Father Ingo Dollinger that the Vatican had withheld a section that warned of a bad council and a bad mass. Combined with the fact that Lucia had asked for the secret to be released by 1960, this seemed to be a reference to the Second Vatican Council and the subsequent liturgical reforms that remain controversial for many traditionalists. The evidence points to only one conclusion: that something has to be missing, said Christopher Ferrara, a U.S. attorney and Catholic commentator who spoke at the conference. Ferrara pointed to what he described as a series of incongruities and inconsistencies in the Vatican's version. Among people truly familiar with the events at Fatima, he said, only a minority cling steadfastly to the notion that an ambiguous vision of a bishop dressed in white outside a half-ruined city is all there is to the third secret. Some argue that the third secret of Fatima was a prophecy so traumatic and dire that several popes decided not to make it known to the faithful, and yet the text published in 2000 contained little more than an allegory about the Church's past struggles with 20th century ideologies. They say there's good reason to believe the third secret wasn't just about the Church battling outside forces, but about Satan working in the Church at the highest levels. Some have deduced that the secret foresaw the changes of the Second Vatican Council, especially in liturgy and ecumenical dialogue, as part of the great apostasy that church leaders refuse to acknowledge. Sounds so scary, right? It is very likely that the third secret of Fatima does not merely refer to the Pope in white, who was later believed to be Pope John Paul II fulfilling the prophecy, but points to a broader picture, which is the crisis of faith and pastoral negligence prophesied. You know, the third secret concerns the infallible definitions of the faith, and that definitions, by their very nature, have to say what the truth is, and therefore, by strict logical implication, what the error is, and that the error is condemned. If a person stubbornly holds on to a condemned error after he has been informed of the infallible truth, then he cannot be saved, unless he repents before he dies. And so it is our duty to witness to the truths of our faith and to protect the little ones from errors against the faith by defending the faith in public. That's why the Church anathematizes those errors and those clergy and laity who stubbornly hold on to them. We know what the third secret is because Pope John Paul II has revealed to us what it is. Pope John Paul II warned us in May 2000 about the dangers to the faith in our day by citing in his sermon, which predicted that 1/3 of the stars of heaven would be taken down to earth by the tail of the dragon, and the Pope indicates to us that the danger is now. Catholic commentaries have traditionally interpreted this passage as referring to 1/3 of the clergy as undermining both the Catholic faith and the salvation of souls by working for the devil. And we also know from other reliable sources, including Cardinal Ratzinger, when he said the third secret refers to the dangers threatening the faith and life of the Christian, and therefore the life of the world. We also know it from Father Malachi Martin, when Our Lady said, "In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved." What do you think it means? It means that the dogma of the faith will not be preserved in various or many other parts of the world because the clergy and faithful are not adhering to the solemn definitions. The third secret concerns the undermining of the Catholic faith throughout Europe and possibly throughout much of the world. If the people adhered to the infallible definitions, they would retain the faith. To safeguard your Catholic faith, you need your own efforts to live a good Catholic life and to read solid Catholic material, to avoid bad books, magazines, TV programs, and to avoid also people who undermine your Catholic faith. But you also need grace. To obtain this grace, you must pray, especially the daily rosary. To avoid being confused, do not follow the false shepherds and the heretics who claim to speak to a deeper understanding of the gospel. If they followed the infallible definitions of the dogmas of the faith, the faithful would judge everything according to what is right and what is wrong, in the light of the gospel and of the infallible definitions that explain the gospel. They would know if something were of the faith or not, and they would know when the other person speaking was in error, no matter what their position and stature in the church was. And they would be able to determine what is wrong, what is against the faith, because the definitions are infallible. That is, they cannot fail. A pope can fail at times. At times, an ecumenical council can fail, a cardinal, a bishop, a priest, or a layperson can fail, but the solemn definitions of the Pope alone, or the Pope together with an ecumenical council, can never fail. This is what Our Lady of Fatima came to warn us about and to tell us what to do. To preserve our own souls and to preserve as many souls of the people around us as we can. And this is what the third secret is about in a few words. And we're on solid ground. Dollinger and Pope Benedict XVI, Holy See Press Office, issued a response that Pope Benedict XVI declares never to have spoken with Professor Dollinger about Fatima, clearly affirming that the remarks attributed to Professor Dollinger on the matter are pure inventions, absolutely untrue. And he confirms decisively that the publication of the third secret of Fatima is complete. And Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone has said one of the reasons the third secret was made public in 2000 was that people were spreading absurd theses about catastrophic events or heresy at the top levels of the church. Cardinal Bertone, who was personally involved in the publication of the third secret, said he was puzzled that some still think the Vatican is hiding something. In 2006, an Italian journalist wrote a book titled The Fourth Secret of Fatima that laid out a Vatican conspiracy theory, prompting a new round of publicity. In 2007, Cardinal Bertone wrote his own book, The Last Visionary of Fatima, which reiterated the official version of the Fatima messages and secrets, and was based, he said, on long conversations with Carmelite sister Lucia dos Santos, the last of the visionaries to die. In TV appearances, the cardinal strongly denied theories of a Vatican cover-up. Pope Benedict was also personally involved in publishing the third secret. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the Vatican's top doctrinal official, presented the text of the secret to the press and wrote a lengthy commentary about it. That news conference on June 26, 2000 is still memorable for Vatican journalists. The stage was set for the disclosure of a text that for decades was thought to be too disturbing to reveal. But instead, Cardinal Ratzinger began by deflating expectations and announcing that there was nothing apocalyptic. No great mystery is revealed, nor is the future unveiled, he said. He went on to give a theological framework to the apparitions and messages of Fatima, insisting that in the Church's tradition, prophecy is not like a film preview, but more like offering signs that can be useful for Christians. Cardinal Ratzinger said, that was how to understand the third secret's vision of a bishop in white, who struggles up a hill amid corpses of slain martyrs and then falls dead after being shot by soldiers. Whether this bishop symbolized Pope John Paul II, who was shot and wounded on May 13, 1981. Father Nicholas Gruner, a Canadian priest who founded the Fatima Crusader magazine, has long maintained that Russia has yet to be consecrated to Mary following the instructions of Our Lady of Fatima. Father Gruner said, "We haven't had the conversion of Russia by any stretch of the imagination. Not militarily, not morally. It's the largest abortion capital of the world. There's just no sign of conversion in any sense." That's another issue the Vatican is tired of dealing with. Church officials say Pope John Paul II in 1984 led the world's bishops in the consecration of Russia and the world. The late Sister Lucia, one of the 3 Portuguese children who saw Mary in 1917 and the one who received the instructions for the consecration, had said that it was properly performed.